Lisa and Johnny, thanks so much for joining me on this episode of Concentrating on Chromatography. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Good to see you, David.
Absolutely. It's been so long.
I know, right? Good, a
Really.
good 2 hours. And by the way, thanks for coming on the noon show today.
Yeah, no, it's super exciting. And of course, a little different doing anything live is a little different than doing something recorded.
Yeah, you have to take what you get.
How did it feel? Going to turn the tables on you. How did it feel going live like that?
Oh, good. Yeah, luckily, since I've been doing this podcast for over a year now, I've certainly had to explain it to a lot of different people. So some of those questions about introducing it to new potential viewers, I'm pretty used to that by now.
I'm sure, yeah.
So, Lisa, you spent 27 years at the University of Alabama. What do scientists consistently misunderstand about communicating their work?
That's a great question, David. Thank you so much for asking that. The main thing that I would actually just suggest is when a researcher is trying to connect with the general public would be just keep in mind that the goal of science communication is to translate the everyday science to a relatable level for people maybe who don't have PhDs. If you can explain it to me, you can explain it to anybody. I'm just going to get that out of the way. I'm not a scientist, but I did work at the University of Alabama Department of Chemistry and Biochemistry for 27 years, role tide and role research. So I would suggest incorporating the use of analogies, relatable analogies, kind of like you did today when we asked you for the definition of chromatography. And the analogy was filtering coffee, making coffee. And it was just beautifully done. If you can think of ways to do that and really, in short, lead with what matters. I would say prepare with the analogies, but make sure that you lead with what matters. And why do I say that? Really, in general, I would say, especially in today's short attention span society, think about TikTok, the video shorts on YouTube, right? You've got to grab your audience's attention in the first few critical seconds. So always lead with, why should I care and why does it matter? That would be my only advice as a science communicator and STEM advocate, not a scientist, again, not a scientist or an expert in any sense of the word, but as an enthusiast and as a consumer of the content myself.
And I suppose all three of us are outsiders from the science perspective, but Johnny, I think you and I are both outsiders from the academia perspective, let's say. What's the biggest disconnect between how scientists talk and how the public or industry actually hears it?
It's not a new issue, quite frankly. If you think about it, education, the arena of education where research sits, uh, a great deal, especially in the areas that we work in business in the private sector and industry, there's always been a communication gap. We don't necessarily always use the same language. So, in my background, I'm an economic developer. And oftentimes we had to include education components in any proposal, whether we were recruiting an automotive manufacturer or a retail center. You have to find common linkage. And what business and industry does, they look for things that are applicable. What's the application? How does this make a difference? How is this going to influence the way I set up the business, the manufacturing process? How am I going to make sure that the business plan is working? And there's a natural difference in the way educators and researchers communicate. So you've got to find that common link, those common terms. And quite frankly, you just have to work at it. I mean, it's not real complicated. You just have to work at it. And you have to ask the question, somewhat to what Lisa said. You got to ask the question, okay, how is this process going to work? How does this apply to my manufacturing process or my business? You've got to find application. And then, as again, as Lisa, I'm echoing her a little bit, how do you explain that so each party understands what we're trying to accomplish? So there, it's again, it's not a new issue. It's been going on for years and years. And in our experience now through what we're doing, we're finding out that, quite frankly, there is more common language than you expect, and you just have to ask the right questions.
So, Johnny, that's a great segue as far as I'd love to hear from the two of you. What are you doing now, and what does that look like moving forward?
Thank you, David, for that question. So, right now we are on the Noon Show, and that is a show that airs in Central Alabama on FM 100.1 Monday through Friday, noon until 1 o'clock Central Time. But it also can be heard from anywhere in the world on thenoonshow.com. So we highlight lots of local topics, but we also have an ongoing spotlight on STEM series, which luckily Johnnie, with his economic development background, has just embraced it. He gets so excited when we bring the researchers on. He starts thinking about economic development opportunities, and it's just a joy to watch him.
Well,
But
yeah, what really happened is that the show, which we're now entering our third year, started off really as a community talk show focused on nonprofits. That's really how it started. But when Lisa and I partnered up, it really opened up a new world. And that sincerely. She brought the academic side because she had spent so much time inside at the university. I had spent a similar amount of time in the economic development world, developing industry, different businesses. And when we combined it, and then in the economic side, STEM is also very important. It's very important because employers are looking for graduates that have that kind of background experience. So it was a natural partnership. And so when we combined forces, we realized that inside this great University of Alabama, a major university, research university in the country, we realized there was opportunity to communicate what was going on inside those labs, inside the faculty, inside the classroom. And as we began to develop that, it really, I think, hit a hot button. It touched a nerve because not only from our point of view were we communicating something important, from the researchers who have come on the show, we realized they were hungry also to tell those stories. So how does that apply to real world, to everyday life in the community, which we have a broad community base of listeners? So how do we translate the world of inside academia to the world of the individual citizens? It's the old town gown scenario. How do we do that? And so, because of the combination, it's developed into something very unique, but very effective, which is leading us to another show, which we have tremendous excitement about.
yes, that's right. So this series has led us to this really wonderful opportunity to onboard with Alabama Public Radio. And we are so excited. But one of the differences with this new upcoming show would be that it's STEM, but we've expanded it to STEAM. So, what that stands for, David, as you well know, would be science, technology, engineering, the arts, and math, which is not my favorite. So that's why I slow down.
Math is
but it does matter. Math matters. I understand.
Math is the little brother.
Yes. So anyway, it's wonderful. It's an intellectual platform, and so exclusively. So we're very excited. We've already recorded a few episodes.
Yes, and the other part of the formula, which makes it again more unique, is that we're going to concentrate on higher education. We're going to start with the University of Alabama system, but we're also adding Auburn University, the University of South Alabama. At some point, we're considering adding the community college system because we want to stay at the level that's having such an impact on future students, future researchers, and future solutions. So
we're both very excited about the new show. Don't forget University of Alabama Huntsville, the aerospace industry, NASA, Hudson Alpha, right. Space Force is coming. So we have almost limitless options, and we're covering, don't forget, industry as well.
Yeah, we're going to add industry too, because to your point, David, as we've had conversations, linking the economic side and the academic side, the research and the industry and the groups where you're going to have hopefully commercialization, you're going to have solutions being implemented. That's where we want to connect all the dots as such. We think we have found a niche that needs to be filled.
So y'all cross your fingers. So as soon as we get our social media up, we need everyone to interact with it. If we do well enough after the first 12 episodes, crossing the fingers, they'll take us statewide. So we'll see how we do.
And so far, the episodes have been quite phenomenal. We have had unbelievably effective shows, mainly because the guests are researchers.
Really, they're phenomenal.
They're brilliant, but they can communicate in everyday language and make it so applicable. And that's what we're trying to accomplish.
That's right.
But yes, I totally agree, Johnny, with your last point as far as the guests really make the episodes. The way I see it, I have the easy job of just showing up and asking the questions, honestly.
I do that part of the job. I'm not going to lie. I love to ask the questions, and I've really been learning the art of active listening. I'm not necessarily good at it yet, but I like to think I'm improving. Now, Johnny's the one who's really good at that. That's a skill that he has honed over the years and helping me to learn. So I do a lot of show prep, but I'm learning that I still have to do the show prep, but the active listenings help us through active listening, we are able to develop more organic conversations.
It's interesting. We prepare in different ways. Lisa's a lot more detailed than I am in preparation. I tend to read some things. I tend to look at a broader picture to try and figure out how it all fits together. So it's, again, we're different personalities. We have different approaches, but somehow it works. And I think the coolest thing is, in my background is I ran the chamber here 28 years, and I worked at the highest levels at the university. I worked with the president. I worked with heads of divisions. If we're doing an economic, for example, Mercedes, I had the president of the university on the team. I had his economic development vice president. So I'm working at that level. So I've got a broader picture. She has an internal picture that I didn't have. And the combination, it gives us both understanding in different ways. And that helps us merge. Our personalities are totally different, but it helps us merge both personality and thought processes, even though they're different. I think the nicest compliment we get some really nice feedback, but probably one of the nicest is y'all got great chemistry. And that's very important if you're doing a show where there's two of us, and the chemistry's got to be there. And thank goodness it works.
Yeah, and he puts up with me, so it's a bonus, right? So what I find fascinating about the whole thing is, so he talks about his economic development background, which is a totally different world than what I'm used to, right? Being immersed in the world of science, but again, not a scientist or was a business major, but very heavily influenced by the world of science over the course of my entire adult life. I don't even think I realized it was happening until after I retired. But when I was there working in the Department of Chemistry and Biochemistry, it was really nothing for me to be stopped in the hall or someone would come in my office. Something great had happened in one of the labs. There was a discovery. There's something really positive, and they want to communicate it. Something really great happened. Check it out. And I heard so many cool things over the years, and I recognized it at the time. However, it was interesting. It took me retiring and having a couple of pivotal conversations afterwards that made me realize, you know what, David, not everybody gets that information because they don't all work inside the University of Alabama or another R1 level research institution in one of those academic departments. And I thought to myself, and this was after I'd started on the noon show, I'm not kidding. I thought to myself, that's a shame. And Johnnie and I should do something about it. And so that was the first inkling of me having that desire to bring the Spotlight on STEM series to the noon show, which started us on the path to BrightPath. So on APR.
And certainly for both of our shows, there's a hope that we can present this scientific, technical content to an audience that doesn't have that scientific background. But I also know that there's a good amount of analytical chemists who listen to my show, especially at the academic level. Why should an analytical chemist or researcher care about the communication aspect beyond just publishing papers?
Well, I'm going to give that one to Johnnie.
Yeah, this is going to sound trite, maybe. I don't mean it that way, but academic, highly intelligent researchers, they're human too. They're part of the community too. The researchers that we've gotten to know, they want our community to grow in a healthy way and new opportunities for their students. We want to retain the talent right here in the community and at the university. So they have a very common link. And I think maybe it's a misunderstanding in some ways that the public doesn't realize discoveries are being made that's going to change the lives of people in our community. It's going to change the direction of our community. It's going to change the economic opportunities of our community. And I think once there's an understanding of that, it goes back to our earlier conversation about the difference in language. But in terms of goals, I don't know if they're that much different. Everybody wants to live in a quality community where it's livable, where they can raise their families, where they can enjoy life. That's the same whether you're a researcher inside of a lab at the University of Alabama or someone working on the line at Mercedes Benz. So there's so many common elements, and I think that's a challenge for people like Lisa, you, and myself, in that how do we help communicate that and help encourage that, because discoveries are changing lives.
And I'd like to add to that answer if it's okay. So I think another reason that scientists in general should care about science communication would be the federal budget cuts.
Oh, yes.
I like to think this has been a thought in the back of my head ever since we had our first guest. Shout out to Dr. Guy Caldwell, who you know and have interviewed, and we've both highlighted on our shows the federal budget cuts. And I would like to think that if the three of us keep going, and maybe there will be other people with other platforms who shine a light on this important subject matter, all of the important research that's going on, maybe the right person or people will hear it. And when I say that, the right people, decision makers who can have an effect on those budget cuts and maybe start turning that ship around, so to speak, in a more positive way. I understand cutting the pork out of the federal budget. I get that. But it would be great if we had the opportunity to have meaningful conversations with those decision makers and try to help shine us a light, on the important science to them and help them to understand why Johnnie likes to talk about Dr. Caldwell and his worms that he spends money. Like if somebody's complaining on Capitol Hill, this is an outrage. Why are they spending so much money on fill in the blank? But then Dr. Caldwell is doing extremely important research on Parkinson's. And as you well know, unfortunately, he and his wife, Dr. Kim Caldwell, have helped to underwrite some of that research with their graduate students out of their own pocket. That shouldn't be. That shouldn't be. And they can't sustain it forever.
Lisa brings up a very critical point. Go back to the question, and we talked about the difference in communications between the business private sector and the public sector, i.e. academia. How many business-oriented organizations have advocacy? They deal with public policy all the time. They deal with funding that may be important, but how many of them are dealing with the issue of funding research? Think about a business association. They put in a policy.
Right.
I'll use my own local chamber of commerce, and I had a very strong public policy component. We never were asked to, didn't know to do, and have policy positions that we could communicate with our elected officials about why research is important and its impact. Think about every business organization, whether it's the U.S. Chamber, the National Association of Manufacturers, the Business Council of Alabama, whoever it is. What if they all got involved in public policy issues that support the life-changing research that's going on in our great universities, whether it's the University of Alabama, Auburn, or somewhere else in the country? That advocacy is really important. And if we can help communicate that to the public, then they can become advocates too.
Great point.
During Lisa's first appearance on my show, Jim Averso had mentioned the Laboratory Products Association, which is where I met gym over 10 years ago. And we are a good example of that, Johnny, just to let you know, where we do
Or
some lobbying efforts on behalf of research and supporting science in general. And it's a unique niche in terms of the commercial side of science, and something that as an organization we have to publicize, both in terms of funding, but then also for some of the researchers we meet with. Certainly, staying in academia for a career is a great choice in pursuing research. But on the commercial side of science, we also have a lot of job opportunities and business development, and a lot of opportunities for those folks with these technical STEAM backgrounds.
also, it affects the talent pool development, the retention of talent. We're competing worldwide as a country, even as a state. We compete across the nation and across the world in developing economic opportunities. What about the talent pool? Absolutely cannot create any economic activity without a substantial, well thought, well educated, very talented talent pool. And if you keep cutting research, you take that away from creating that talent pool because the students suffer.
I agree. And here's the thing, back to the example of doctors Guy and Kim Caldwell. Think about it this way. If they believe in the research that they're doing at such a level that they are willing to take money out of their own pockets to fund it, that's a bold statement. And to me, it just seems like a no-brainer that when you've got people in there, in the trenches who are even putting their own money into their research and what their grad students are doing, isn't I just would like to have a conversation or two or three or four, however many we need, to help affect positive change. And I will tell you this, David. So again, and I know you listened to our episode too with Guy Caldwell, but for your listeners who may not have heard it, so again, this was our first STEM guest, and I would love to see my partner's face, the one with the long time civic leader, just so you know, uh, long term economic development experience. His face starts changing. He starts hearing the things that Dr. Caldwell is talking about, and he's just loving it. You can tell. And then he just gets excited when the STEM researchers come on, and this guy over here, I'm not even kidding. So by the end of the episode, really even well before the end, he starts saying, okay, start reaching out to your senators and congressmen, and starts calling names first, but he says it in a friendly way. Thank them for everything that they do. And I believe he gave some phone numbers out.
And it's
Well,
public information.
It is, yes. It's
well,
friendly way because it's all positive stuff.
I think it's very natural, but I'm serious. It really just occurred to me as we were having this conversation that advocacy is a big part of the business community. The associations
That's right.
that serve our community, whether it's a local chamber of commerce or a national organization, there's an advocacy role there because it has impact on so many different areas. One, talent development for the future of this country. Two, economic opportunities for the future of this country. And solutions to major issues, whether it's something to do with material science, health,
Precise.
precision time, the defense industry, whatever it is, nothing happens without a discovery. Nothing gets discovered without the research.
Right.
So I'm just becoming more and more convinced that the private sector needs to really understand this. And again, that's what you do, David. You're trying to connect the dots. That's what we're trying to do.
Right.
And earlier we talked about how busy these scientists are. And I definitely wanted a focus of today to be on some news you can use. So let's say I'm a busy chromatographer or someone doing analytical chemistry. Where do I start if I want to become more visible in promoting my work?
You could start by reaching out to The Noon Show on LinkedIn. If you're not in the state of Alabama, or if you're not in my contacts, you can always drop us a message on my LinkedIn, or Johnnie Aycock, Johnnnie, or Lisa Jones of The Noon Show. We haven't created the BrightPath social media yet. That's a great place to start. You could reach out to David Oliva on his LinkedIn, the host of the podcast Concentrating on Chromatography. That's really a good place to start. What would you suggest, Johnnie?
I do too. I think, again, dealing with the different components of this, the word, and it's overused, I know, but it's collaboration, it's partnerships. Over my years, I realized that you could not create anything successful with the right partnerships. You've got to have the right people at the table. They've got to be communicating, even though they may be communicating in different ways. You've got to have everybody around the table. I would suggest, and whether it's here at the university, the University of Alabama has a strong relationship and partnership with the community and with the business community. So it starts there at the highest levels, at the presidential levels. There's got to be a policy in place and an understanding that those partnerships have to be used, but that goes for the private sector too. So I think the private sector has to reach out and make the doors open, make themselves available. So if I'm a researcher at the university and I believe in something that's going to make a difference, I would be reaching out to local policymakers, local business leaders, and getting involved and help the private sector understand that they have a role in being a partner with the research community, but vice versa is also true. I would start in a very forward way, in a very practical way, is where I would start, and start building that community of advocacy, which includes everyone at the table.
Yeah, great answer. Most scientists go to conferences every year. They send their graduate students to conferences, and because they need to. That's really important. Of course, you get the networking, and then there are a number of talks, educational talks. But it hit me as Johnnie was answering that. But you're preaching to the choir in a way. That's not a way to get the message out to the average person on the street. I think it's important for them to realize that, because they're surrounded at conferences by their own people, right? By more of their own kind, which is a great, like I said, that's extremely valuable. It's needed for networking for any number of reasons, continuing education, and lots of wonderful things. But I'm glad you asked that question.
Yeah.
That sort of opened a can of worms in my own mind. Yeah.
It opens up an example. Here's a real example. Lisa and I, this has been a year ago, were invited to attend an academic conference on applications of AI on the University of Alabama campus. These were all academic people. We were the only two in the room that were not, but we were invited to sit in. Out of that relationship, out of that opportunity came several new contacts, several new connections. And because of that, many of them have now been on the Noon Show, talking about their research, talking about what they're doing on campus, talking about the applications to whether it's students, learning, or application in the workplace or in the marketplace. So just by being there and getting to know and connect, we now have a broader opportunity to help communicate to the general public. So that participation, that involvement in being part of community, I think is a critical point.
And as we go along, I've noticed that some of the researchers we have on sometimes will reach out and make positive comments about other researchers that way. So it's not only
or suggest new ones.
Yeah. So it's all great. We're just trying to do our part where we can to try to highlight the great research and innovations that go on inside these universities. And we're expanding beyond the University of Alabama at the request of the University of Alabama, where BrightPath is being recorded there. That's where it's produced. And they said, if you're going to cover the state, you've got to cover all of the state universities, the big ones, which we are excited to do. And they're encouraging us to cover industry as well. So we will cover as much as we can and get a broad like a broad view of what's going on.
David, when it comes right down to the old bottom line, it's really about connections. It's about relationships. It's building communication paths to each other. This is not complicated stuff. What happens is we all get so busy in our own world, we forget there's a bigger world. And through our just small steps, maybe we're beginning to plant some seeds that will maybe spread. But it really comes down to relationships. I don't care what you're working on, what field you're in, it's all about relationships. And I think there's a true opportunity between academic and research and the general public and the private sector. I think there's some huge opportunities.
One thing I would point to as a guide is that there's a lot of great role models in a sense out there. And I can certainly refer people to some of these researchers I know who manage their own websites or have YouTube channels and put their work out there. But yeah, as Johnny, you mentioned, so much of the success is showing up. And on one hand, these researchers are short on time, but also that's really all that's required. To go in the weeds a little bit, my concentrating on chromatography website, I pay for the domain, but it's a free website that's on HubSpot and I'm embedding YouTube videos. So that's a free platform. So the investment would be a couple $100 for someone to start doing something similar regarding their own research and sharing their own content. And I would assume that some of the people that I have on the show or you have on your show, they're already presenting at these conferences. So the
Sure.
idea of doing just one more run through and recording it and putting it out there, yes, it might seem like a lot. The number one fear is public speaking, right? But at the same time, you're so close. You've done all the work. It's just that last, I don't know, 5% in terms of sharing it with a wider audience.
And, you're talking about public speaking being the number one fear. My advice would be, and everyone's heard this before, the more you do it, the easier it gets. Because for me, what's incredibly interesting is I never even had an interest in public speaking, David, until after, I would say, about January of 2022, quite frankly. And it's just interesting how our paths get directed in ways. And I didn't realize I was being influenced by the world of science the way I was. And I realized I have this incredible passion for innovations and research and discovery. I don't know how I could not even be aware of it. I think that it's a shame. It really is a shame that there's a large, I would say, portion of people who they're just not really aware. I think it's only fair for them to have the opportunity to start discovering the incredible things that are happening. For example, even last week, and this is not even with the research or anything, we had the Alzheimer's Association of West Alabama on our show. And we were told that, guess what? The Alzheimer's Association nationally last week was in Washington, D.C., lobbying Congress to have insurance cover. There's a new blood test that can help to detect if you have the gene that says that you will develop Alzheimer's. And here's the thing. I've had a couple family members with Alzheimer's, and we've been reminded over and over there's no cure. There's no cure yet, at least. But here's the thing. They're saying that coming down the line is a vaccine. If you ever listen to the Noon Show, I'm a big fan of old sayings, and old sayings are there for a reason. And one of my favorites is an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. It's incredible. It's hard to even begin to scratch the surface of the incredible things that research and new innovations do for our world all of the time. And the thing is, there's a lot of information out in the world. There's a lot of noise, and we'll have to decide what they focus on. We hope that we can make it interesting enough, leading with what's important, and hopefully that makes it entertaining enough so that they care and maybe help to affect positive change, increase federal funding opportunities, and just trying to do something that matters if possible.
I think we've done a great job in this episode underscoring why scientists need to tell their story. Johnny focusing on the industry impact, and Lisa commenting on the visibility side. I was wondering if you could touch on any success stories that you've heard from your guests in terms of the benefits they received from that added visibility and that platform you helped provide.
I think probably a couple of things come to mind. Number one is the feedback we're getting from the researchers themselves by connecting their peers. They're realizing this is a good platform. It's one that probably doesn't exist in a lot of ways, and they have found a platform that gives them the opportunity to talk about the applications of their research. The whole idea that without research, we don't discover cures, we don't discover solutions to issues. That's the first thing that comes to mind. The second thing that comes to mind is each one of those who have been on our show also communicate to us about their involvement in two levels. Number one, with other industries and businesses. Here in Tuscaloosa at the University of Alabama, we've got researchers working on space development, on defense industries, which all actually concentrated pretty much in North Alabama, but they're also working in concert with industry on the coast in terms of other major industries. So we're hearing and communicating that they're not just doing research in the lab, they're actually making a difference in a very practical way by applying their research to solutions in industry. The other part of that is, and this is, I think, one of the most exciting things, they're telling us about the talent retention that's going on here. Many of their talented, mostly graduate, postgraduates, PhD candidates, they're wanting to stay here and live here. And we're hearing that more and more. And from my perspective as an economic developer, that's exactly what we want. We've got the biggest workforce talent pool in Alabama here in Tuscaloosa. It's the largest. And they're telling us that many of them are now wanting to live here and stay here and continue to do their research. So they're actually growing new researchers. So those three things come to mind.
The other that I would like to highlight, whether a researcher is staying in academia or moving more into commercial science, my hope, especially for students approaching their graduation, is that having a polished, professional looking presentation of their work could be a major part of a resume and their presentation for a culmination of all the work they've done on this specific project that they want to highlight. Although I don't have a specific story to point to, I can't see how that would not be helpful in someone's job search.
That's exactly
Yeah, I
right.
would agree with that.
And also, before I forget it, we also have a company. The genesis of this company started here a long time ago, but we have a brand new company that just located in our industrial development park that is directly tied to precision time research at the University of Alabama, where they're going to be building atomic clocks and optical clocks. And they're one of the few in the world doing this, and they just located a new company here. There's a specific example of how research is being applied to the economic vitality of the community and creating a workforce.
Don't forget, they're the only company in the free world who's producing hydrogen masers.
That's right.
That's right. So, but yeah,
that's directly from research.
That's directly from research. But we know lots of examples of how the research has affected positive change for people. Example, we had a researcher from Auburn University on our show yesterday, and we were talking about the catfish industry. And for me, again, I'm a consumer of this kind of content. So honestly, David, the catfish industry is probably the biggest economic driver for our state that I never really gave a thought to, because we have, just so you know, we have a very large number of catfish ponds in Hale County, Alabama, and in other counties, but the majority are in Hale County. And the entire production of American farmed catfish would really comes from the state of Alabama, 30% of it, and then 60% from Mississippi. And then there's another state or two. But once you add all of that up, it gets into over $1 billion of economic impact. That's billion with a B. And here's the thing, there's an Auburn researcher that is stationed in Hale County and who is completely at the service of the catfish farmers. Their fish are sick, they bring them there. They don't need to travel all the way to Auburn, Alabama. They came up with a solution, a real world solution for oxygenating these ponds overnight because photosynthesis is dependent on light. If you know anything about the science of photosynthesis, which is something you learn pretty early on, right? It gets to be nighttime, the fish still need to breathe. And at one time, the farmers were having to stay up all night long to monitor that. So they, at Auburn University, invented aeration for these ponds. Now they're still monitored 24 hours a day, but they're able to hire someone. It's incredible the amount of work that goes on just in that one industry. And I didn't have an understanding or a grip on how important it was until we were invited to a catfish haul, which was very eye-opening, and it was a lot of fun. But then we learned even more from the researcher, Dr. Luke Roy, Auburn University professor. And then I was outnumbered in the noon show studio.
We do serve Auburn through BrightPath.
That's true. That's true. Well, and I like to joke because especially, we're
in Roll Tide
we're in
country.
Roll Tide country. We call it Title Town, David. I know that's not your culture being in Massachusetts, and I like to joke, but that Auburn University professor was very welcome in our studio. We were very excited to see him and quite frankly, excited for future collaborations with Auburn University.
And let's show the
And
application.
beyond.
Let me show you the application of what Lisa's talking about. The catfish industry is a major industry, but it's located in some of the poorest counties in Alabama, in rural Alabama. It's a lifeline for those citizens. So the research that's helping grow the industry directly affects some of the poorest areas in our state. Therefore, it's so vital. Without the research and that support, guess what happens? The catfish industry dies. It's just that simple.
And off the top of my head, is that the Iron Bowl? Is that the big game is called between the two?
Big
Yeah.
The biggest college rivalry in sports.
And just so you know, just as an aside, David, I've always thought this is hilarious, but it's an ingenious way to raise money. So the West Alabama Food Bank has this fundraiser. I believe it's started by the sororities on campus of the University of Alabama.
Student led.
Student led, and it's called Beat Auburn, Beat Hunger. And they've been doing it for years. So there's collection bins all over campus at the University of Alabama and all over Tuscaloosa. So the goal is money donations, food donations in these bins, and they do the same thing at Auburn University ahead of the Iron Bowl. And the rivalry fuels it because these fans are serious. They want to win on every platform, on every level, and but it's a win-win-win because it raises more resources for the food bank of West Alabama.
Oh, absolutely.
Good use.
That's great to hear. And yeah, just that topic in general, that's one thing I'm sensitive to in terms of organimation as a global exporter. We're manufacturing here in Massachusetts and shipping all around the world. There's a lot of local issues. For example, in Asia, a lot of our applicability is in palm oil exports, and so much has to do with the exports of that specific country because that's the food they're testing. Like in Peru, I believe it's blueberries. That's what they're analyzing for pesticides to make sure it's verified as safe so that they can market their products to sell to us, probably.
Could be.
And again, David, and we've talked about this several times, but if this nation is going to be competitive in the future, we've got to understand the role of research in the marketplace because we may be getting out researched by folks in other countries that we compete with. And we better be prepared for the future. And that's everything from funding our researchers appropriately, growing the talent pool for the future, and developing a better understanding between all parties, whether it's public policy or whether it's application in the workplace. We better be doing the kind of things that make us competitive and keep us competitive.
But as a small business manager, very happy to see the R&D tax credit returned, because on the commercial
Yes,
side, looking at our spending and investment and tax subsidy for R&D, we can't afford to go without that, because we will just lose on the competitive front if we're not able to invest enough dollars there.
that's right. You're exactly right. And again, that's a public policy issue. And it's another reason for academia and the business sector, especially, to be in lockstep in advocating on a consistent, aggressive way to make sure public policy is in place to do exactly that, because it could change overnight.
I think we did a great job introducing the two of you, the work with BrightPath, why scientists should care about telling their stories, and some actionable steps they could take. What did we miss today that we should definitely cover?
Did we actually talk about BrightPath specifically enough? I think we talked about science communication
Yeah, we talked about it.
mostly. Did we even say the BrightPath word more than 2 or 3
Oh,
times?
yeah.
Did we?
But yeah, is there anything you'd like me to ask you specifically about, or any?
Let's just let your listeners know that BrightPath is a new upcoming STEAM show. It's going to be airing on Friday, or yeah,
It's
it's
going to
going to be.
be,
Have you ever listened to Science Fridays on NPR?
Yeah,
It's
I've heard
sort of
it.
our statewide answer to that. Not an answer, but our
let's
state version.
hopefully a little bit more applicable and practical. Trying to again bridge the
Well,
gap between research and helping people understand its application. So it's got a little bit more, I think, a little bit more practical application. It's similar, but yeah, it's going to be a weekly show. We're recording our 12 first shows now, and we don't know the release date. We think July or August, and but the potential is to go statewide is where we're at. We're wanting to make sure that we touch every corner of our state. And so it's a new opportunity, brand new show for APR. The one Lisa's talking about is NPR, but this will be a new Alabama public radio show.
oh, I know what we could do. We can ask your listeners to watch for any upcoming announcements.
Yeah.
So we just don't have the details yet.
Yeah.
We just know it's once a week on Fridays,
But
and we don't know what it starts. So
yeah, and we've had high level researchers on the show already. I think, and Lisa mentioned this, we're going to have the president of the University of Alabama do a show with us. It's going to be a two-parter, which tells me the president of the University of Alabama, who's got a schedule that's unbelievably demanding, says, I like what you're doing. And the president of the University of South Alabama has indicated he's going to come on. So that's pretty high level when we get that kind of support. So we think we've got a product that's going to make a difference.
we hope so.
Absolutely. I'll be happy to promote your work as it becomes available, and certainly as you get going, and make sure to get the audience beyond Alabama, but interested in certainly analytical chemistry, to check out the content.
Thank you so much, David.
One great question you had drafted for me earlier for the appearance on the noon show that I thought would be fun to circle back to. The question was, how can science communication influence students considering careers in chemistry or medicine or
I was
engineering?
asking that one, David, and somehow we detoured away from
No,
it.
no, time constraints.
I would love to hear the answer, though.
Yeah, I mean, one interesting thing there is that I feel like my generation had Bill Nye the Science Guy and
Yes.
Magic School Bus. And we've touched on this, but there's not that many outlets doing what we're doing. But it would be great if one of those, and believe me, I don't mean me when I say this, but if there was some sort of notable slight celebrity doing that sort of thing, like Bill Nye, because a lot of people from my generation, I feel like, oh yeah, we would watch that in our fifth grade science class and presenting the content in an interesting way. I interviewed
Doesn't it
someone
look like fun?
yesterday from University of North Dakota who's doing forensic science, and my school had a criminal justice and forensic science, those two majors, I should say. And
Right.
I know a lot of the inspiration for those people was watching CSI or NCIS and all those shows. Yeah, I think part of that's missing from chemistry today. But hopefully,
That's a great point.
yeah, hopefully podcasts and radio and YouTube, hopefully that can fill the void, I suppose.
It just I would love to be even a small part of something like that, and I'm sure you would too, and I'm sure Johnny would as well. It looks like it would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I'm a good example, quite frankly. I was not into science growing up. I wish I'd known what I know now, that old saying, but as the world has kind of been opened up for me, now I'm trying to learn. I guess you can always learn.
Sure.
I've watched documentaries on quantum physics. Give me a break. That's crazy. But I think students need to understand today that there's so many aspects to science. There's so many pieces of it. And the world is going to be such that there's always going to be a need for skilled trades. There's always going to be a need for certain jobs. But the world is getting ready to open up on science-based jobs, whether it's engineering or math or science or whatever it is. So the whole STEM related world out there, I just hope that our educators understand that we've got to encourage our kids and make it fun, make it
Right.
interesting, make it engaging, and make it real. And because that's the future, whether we're here or not, that's the future.
Johnny and Lisa, this has been great. I really appreciate you coming on today and sharing everything about BrightPath and all the interviews you've already done that have already made a big difference in terms of sharing the stories of chemistry professors, researchers, everyone doing all this critical work. Yeah, I look forward to having a follow up conversation once BrightPath is up and running, and look forward to viewing the first episodes.
Thank you so much, David.
Yeah, thank you, David. We appreciate your support and your encouragement.